Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Truck Stop Opinion Shop. We're here, we believe that no news is great news. But unfortunately, as always, there is news to cover. And before we start, don't forget hit the like, hit the notification bell, follow future content, subscribe, leave a comment or two, and let's jump right into things. In today's show, I want to start by saying we're all well aware of the massive tragedy that happened in the elementary school, but I'm not going to speak of the specifics of it because I don't feel like giving attention to that murdering bastard. And I say bastard not lightly, I say it in a very, very aggressive way. I hope he's rotting in hell. But we are going to talk about gun control, which you may find it surprising, but I do believe in gun control. I believe that at all times you should have two hands on your firearm with a firm but not too tight grip, and only leave one hand off when you need to reload. See, only an idiot would look at this situation where innocent, unarmed people in a gun-free zone were slaughtered by a worthless, useless criminal with a firearm and say, what we need to do is pass more laws to take the guns out of the hands of good people. No. Instead, what you should be doing is looking at this situation and saying, hey, maybe it's about time we have more security and put guns in the hands of more good people so that they can fight back. And you might not be able to save every life, but you can cut the cost down dramatically. And we could at least fight back. And you could also cause people to not do these sorts of things because they're afraid to be shot back at. See, there is a reason why these people pick gun-free zones, because they don't want a fight. They want to slaughter. They want to slaughter as many innocent people as they can. That's why 98% of all gun crimes take place in gun-free zones, because they just want to kill. They don't want you to be able to fight back. But the Democrats, they look at this, they say, hey, let's take the guns away from good people. Why do you need a clip that holds more than 10 rounds? Here's a good reason. Because the criminal has a clip that holds more than 10 rounds. That's a good start. Another good start would be enforcing the death penalty more on these murderous thugs. Oh, I know liberals are saying, well, how could you be pro-life and pro-death penalty? Well, crazy person, it's because I'm pro-sacred life and I'm not pro-murderous thugs. I believe those people should not be on this earth to commit those crimes. I believe the death penalty should be there to deter these sort of things, to give them something to think about. That not only will they be put to death, they'll have to slowly think about it. And then they'll have their peers stand and watch as they slowly fade away into the abyss. This, in my opinion, is a good thing. It's a good thing when murderous people are put down. And let's keep it real here. Are we really going to take morality lessons from these sick people who a week ago were protesting for the right to kill babies? I mean, honestly, what is the difference between those kids that were unfortunately murdered or babies who are unfortunately murdered? If you believe there's a difference between little babies or little poor children, if you believe there's a difference between them, you're what's wrong in this country, because there isn't. That is both sacred life, and they're being murdered, and I'm against murdering them in any way, whether it's a needle or a gun. It needs to stop. See, the left doesn't even want you to be able to protect yourself. They don't want to put down murderous people. They want criminals to go through the front door and out the back door when it comes to the justice system. Even John Hinckley Jr., the guy who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan and shot him, and several others, they just released him this year. And guess what? He's now selling out shows, probably to left-wing nut jobs who think he's a hero.
The information was not complete. President Ronald Reagan was hit by gunshot. 3 others were also wounded. As President Reagan was driven away, gunman John Hinckley Jr. was wrestled to the ground. Press Secretary Jim Brady, a Secret Service agent, and a police officer were also shot.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing great. I'd like to say that I'm starting a record label.
This morning, the man who tried to assassinate President Ronald Reagan more than 40 years ago is preparing to play a sold-out concert in New York City this summer.
You're in my dreams most every night.
66-year-old John Hinckley, who plays guitar and sings, recently started a record label and has gained more than 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. posting original songs and covers, tweeting, "I'm very excited about my upcoming show. Ticket sales are good."
Oh yes, John Hinckley Jr. It's the show of the century. You must see. But you will, because we have special footage of it. We have his first show.
I'll give it a shot. All right? Got a great kitty white one and a tabby too, and a big orange guy put snakes in my shoe. Mad MC skills leave you struck, and I roll with my kitties and my herd. I'm down with Plato and Socrates, and I like to get busy with all the ladies. Rolling back, something.
But the Democrats have a long history of releasing criminals like this, especially some of the political nature. They did just recently release the two people who killed Malcolm X. Sirhan, who killed Robert F. Kennedy, was barely not released. They almost released him. He probably will be one day. But they've also released terrorists like FALN. You may not remember who FALN was, but, well, I'll show you who they are.
Police hurry to America's House of Representatives in Washington following an attack by 3 Puerto Ricans, including Rafael Miranda, who fired on the senators in the chamber. Fellow gunman Andres Condero and the woman member of the trio Lolita Lebron are hustled away from the menacing crowd. Firing more than 20 rounds from their Luger automatics, the 3 fanatics seriously wounded 5 senators.
All 4 of those people that you just seen, their sentences were commuted by Jimmy Carter, and they were all sent back to Puerto Rico. Now, we've been told recently that January 6th was the worst attack in U.S. history on the Capitol. Meanwhile, you had that group, and the Democrats pardoned them. Or how about this left-wing group that many people have forgot about? The all-female terrorist group that attacked the Capitol and FBI buildings and a lot of other places. Let's check them out.
May 19th was a women-led violent extremist group that sought to overthrow colonialism and imperialism, both at home and abroad, formed by a group of well-educated middle-class women in the late 1970s. Many of them had been involved in extremist groups like the Weather Underground. They decided, even though it looked like the revolution wasn't around the corner, which some believed it, that it was still possible and that they needed to devote their lives really to further their political aims. On October 20th, 1981, when they were involved in a botched, deadly robbery in upstate New York, the Brinks robbery, where 2 policemen were murdered and a security guard was murdered. The women of May 19th had served as getaway drivers. One of them was caught on the spot, Judy Clark.
Judith Clark has spent more than half her life in prison, but at the age of 69, she's been freed on parole.
And then the second phase, the women went on a bombing campaign. They decided to target what they considered to be imperialism directly. So they bombed an FBI field office in New York. They bombed Fort McNair in Washington, specifically the National War College. They bombed the Washington Navy Yard twice. They bombed the police union headquarters in New York. And as probably their most infamous bombing act, on November 7th, 1983, they bombed the U.S. Capitol, causing roughly $1 million worth of damage.
Oh yes, another bombing of the U.S. Capitol by a left-wing group. You know, January 6th was the worst attack in U.S. history. But Susan Rosenberg, one of the main members there, she was pardoned by Bill Clinton on one of his last days. And Susan Rosenberg was one of the people that did a big fundraising thing for Black Lives Matter. She sat on a board of one of the big fundraisers. So everything comes full circle in this world. But there's more. There's more crazy things that the Democrats have pardoned.
New York City, October 26, 1974. Just after midnight. 5 explosions rock Manhattan.
Obama is also taking heavy criticism for commuting the sentence of a convicted terrorist. Senior correspondent Eric Shawn has that story from New York.
It was the terrorist bombing of an American landmark, where George Washington bid farewell to his troops. The 1975 attack on New York City's Francis Tavern. The culprit, the Puerto Rican independence group, the FALN. Now, President Obama's decision to commute the sentence of convicted FALN leader Oscar Lopez Rivera, who has been serving a 70-year prison term, is sparking outrage from the FALN's victims.
The enemies of our country are being rewarded and treated as if they're heroes. And what we hear is that Oscar Lopez didn't get to know his family. Well, neither did my father.
Joe Connor's father, Frank, was one of the 4 people killed that day. 60 others were injured.
And of course, there's also been recent attacks on Republicans and conservatives, violent terrorist attacks, like Bernie Sanders supporter who shot up the Republican baseball team.
Captured on cell phone video, the chilling moment that rapid gunfire broke out in Alexandria this morning.
Shots being fired, and there are people running, possibly victims involved.
An all-out gun battle as Capitol Hill police and Alexandria officers engaged a lone gunman, 66-year-old James Hutchinson, targeting Republican members of Congress who were practicing for a charity baseball game. After an intense gunfight that shut out the windows of the next-door YMCA, Hutchinson was shot and wounded. He died a few hours later at the hospital. Meanwhile, all 5 victims were rushed to area hospitals. Representative Scalise taken off the field by medics, a police officer taken out by chopper.
What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with gun control, and what is the point of bringing all this up? Well, the point for me bringing all this up is to show a pattern. Show a pattern that this party and anything it says is not to be taken serious. Now they believe that us, who just believe in the Constitution, people having equal rights, having the right of free speech, the right to protect themselves, that we are the terrorists. When we don't want to overthrow this government, quite the opposite. We're trying to keep it from being destroyed by a soft coup, or maybe not a soft coup, because there's some pretty violent stuff that comes from the left. Now they'll point for January 6th, which I believe may have been orchestrated by the FBI. But who knows? Oh, I'm just kidding. The FBI would never do that. They're always on the up and up. Everyone knows that the FBI is just spot free and just out to help us. I've never met anybody in my life that said, I want to overthrow the government. I want to attack a politician or anything like that. I mean, I've just never even come across that. So it's hard to believe that there was this big orchestrated attack on January 6th from the MAGA group when they're the ones who believe in this country. They're the ones who believe in law enforcement, so why would they want to hurt law enforcement? None of it ever made any sense. But, hey, worst terrorist attack on Congress in American history. So that's going to wrap up today's show. And as always, I'd like to thank you for spending some of your time with me. Don't forget to hit the like, hit the subscribe button, pop the notification bell, and don't cause violence, but be prepared for those who want to cause violence on you. Take care, everybody.